Hello and welcome back to another video tutorial from devtechie.com. And in this video tutorial, we are going to be building this GitHub style contribution chart in SwiftUI. And you're going to see how you can create a component that can be reused. For example, here we are showing 30 days of activity, and here we are showing a full year activity. So how you can basically draw these contribution charts for various different ranges, and also you can theme them according to your app's need. Okay, so this is what we're going to be building from scratch. Now, before we dive into today's topic, I just wanted to quickly highlight that if you have not visited devtechie.com, I would highly encourage you to visit. We have updated our courses on Apple Foundation models, and we have 3 of them. We've also basically updated our machine learning on iOS and SwiftUI, and this course basically has 36 lessons where you're gonna build basically complete end-to-end apps, and you're gonna basically see how you can power your apps using machine learning that is provided by the infrastructure that is provided by Apple for you to leverage. In Apple Intelligence and Apple Foundation models are basically for your on-device LLM calls, so GenAI related applications is what's covered in these 3 courses. Apart from that, we have a bunch of other courses that you should definitely check out to build up your knowledge in iOS development in general. Okay, all right, so with that, let's go ahead and get started for today's focus, and that is going to be building this contribution map. Okay, so let me pull up the Xcode and we're gonna get started. All right, so I've got everything ready to go, and we're gonna start with an empty space. So let's go ahead and start with import statement. So we're gonna import SwiftUI. Again, we're gonna be building this in SwiftUI, and the way we're gonna start is basically by first defining a data model. And this data model is going to represent the contribution cell, the cell that is basically represented by each individual item in this graph, which is basically your contribution that you've made, that you're depicting and depicting in this chart. Okay, so we're going to create our struct. And this is going to be called contribution cell, and we're going to make it identifiable, so it basically has its own ID. And we're going to create ID first to satisfy the protocol requirement, and then we're going to create a couple of properties. First property is going to be a value of type double, and then opacity, and that is going to be of type double as well. And opacity basically controls how much of a contribution you've made for that particular day. So your contribution is at max or highest, then it's going to be basically fully opaque. Otherwise it'll have some opacity, and that's what's going to create this nice effect. Okay, all right, so next, once we have our contribution cell, we're going to start with our contribution chart view. So we're going to create our struct contribution charts view, and basically this is going to conform to a view protocol, and then we're going to start working towards what's the input that we're going to need. So we're going to need data, and data is going to be some sort of array of double values. we're also going to need how many rows we want to show. Again, this one is the component that is going to be used by other views to basically build out this view, this final view, right? So this is basically going to expect how many rows and columns, and what's the target value. Target value is basically your value that you're targeting. Now it can come out like, as a max value from this data, or you can pass it as a value that that you want to target. Now, in case of GitHub contribution, it will be the max, but let's say if your use case is different, where what is the maximum that you can hit for that particular data point, that is what you're going to define as the target value. So this is something that you can make it configurable. That's why we are actually putting it as target value. Okay, now once we have our properties for input, we're gonna have some properties for appearance. Okay, and these are going to be basically what is the block size, that you're seeing here. So block size, this is going to be a CG float type. Then spacing between each of the block, what you have between the spacing between these blocks that you have present there. What is the corner radius, and block color. Also, we want to define empty color. What happens when no contribution is made? What's the empty state color? So empty color is going to be another color property. In our case, it's going to be gray. So gray are areas where no contribution was made. Okay, now we're gonna basically create a computer property, and this computer property is going to be determining how many total number of cells we are displaying here. So we're going to create a private variable, total cells. This is going to be an integer type, and this is simply going to be rows times columns. Okay, so this is going to be total number of total cells. There we go. Okay. All right. Next, we're going to create a normalized data, and this is going to be returning our contribution cell. So the data that we have received in the form of double, we're going to transform that data into the data that can be represented by these contribution cell type, data type that we have created. So we are going to create another computer property, and this is going to be called normalized data. From return type is going to be contribution cell array. Okay, now we're going to create some padding first. So let padded data.prefix, and we want to take our total cells, and we're going to create an array repeating 0, and count is going to be max between 0 total and total cells minus data dot count. Okay, so this is going to create our padded value, and we're going to return the padded dot map, and we're going to return our contribution cells here. So we're going to say value is going to be the first property for the that's coming out of padded, because this is just a double. So basically it's just that value that we are getting, and the opacity is basically going to be target value, like normalized value between and this needs to be changed. This is Xcode generating, but we need to change this a little bit. And the way we're going to change this is going to be, this value is going to be minimum of either the first parameter $0 divided by target value or 1.0. So that's the normalized value that we are using for the opacity, normalized between 0 to 1. Okay. Then we're going to have our total width of the chart. Okay, so this is going to be another computer property. So we're going to create a private variable chart width CG float, and this is going to be a CG float converted, and it's going to be columns times block size plus we're gonna have CG float column -1 times spacing. So this basically gives total number of columns, like, however many they are, and the block size. Depending upon the block size, we're gonna get basically the width of the total width of the chart itself. Okay, now when we have all the properties ready to go, we are ready to create our body property. So we're going to create our body property, and this body property is going to have an H stack. This H stack is going to have spacing, and the spacing is going to come from the spacing parameter right here. Okay, and then we're going to have our for each, and this for each is going to be on columns. So you're going to have columns. Let's ID each column by itself, and we get a column here. Now inside this, we're going to create a VStack with spacing, and we're basically creating a grid here. So we're going to create our VStack, and inside the VStack, we're going to create another for each. And this for each is going to be on the rows and ID by itself for each individual row. Okay, now we're going to create our index property. So index is going to be computed based on column and rows plus row. Okay, and then we're going to have our cell, which is going to be normalized data based out of, which is going to come from the index that is computed. So that gets us each individual cell. And you have your rounded rectangle with corner radius, and the corner radius is going to be passed in as the value. Let's go ahead and add fill, and fill is going to be your block color. Opacity is going to be cell dot opacity. Frame is going to have block size as width and block size as height. So we're going to create a square, and for the background, we're going to simply have a rounded rectangle with corner radius, fill with empty color first. Okay, so that's how our basically our cell is gonna look like, right? So it's gonna have basically this empty color by default, and then we're gonna start filling the actual color, and based on its opacity, the cell will light up. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and make sure everything is formatted, and then we're gonna set our frame. So let's set our frame on the H stack, saying frame with width is gonna be the chart width, and we want to make sure it is clicked. Okay, all right, so our contribution chart view, basically the component itself, is ready. Now we're going to create basically a view which is going to use this component. So let's go ahead and create first basically a view that actually represents 30 days of task. Okay, so we're going to create a struct task completed or completion 30 days view, and this is going to be conforming to the view protocol. Okay, and we're gonna have a few things here. Let's go ahead and have a title, and this is up to you how you wanna basically structure this view. It's gonna have some basic properties. For example, it's gonna have data for double and daily target. These values can come from an API. We're also gonna have properties for rows, and in our case we're gonna have 2 rows and 15 columns, and we're going to create some properties like block size, which is going to be CG float. Let's start with 18, spacing of 5 points, corner radius of 3 maybe, block color, let's start with blue, empty color, let's start with secondary dot opacity 0.3, and then we're gonna have our body. Okay, and this body is basically where we're gonna structure our view, and let's go ahead and create a preview, and this preview will show basically as we are building. Okay, so let's go ahead and fix the preview. There we go. Task completion 30 days view. Okay, and this expects view parameters to be passed in, so let's go ahead and pass in those parameters. So we want to what's going to be the title? So the title is going to be last 30 days, and let me go ahead and refresh this. The data, we're gonna basically generate data, random data. So let's go ahead and generate basically random set of elements. Let's set the daily target as 10 as the maximum number or maximum opacity that we're gonna reach. So 10 is gonna basically any task with 10 contribution will be lit up in full color, okay, without any opacity. For the data, we're gonna simply create a 0 to less than 30, and let's map this with double dot random in 0 to 10. So anywhere from 0 to 10 it's gonna generate a random number, and it's gonna generate 30 of them. Okay, so that's what this guy's gonna do. Now at this point it's not gonna show anything because what we have is like, you know, just an empty text. So let's go ahead and fix that. We're gonna create a VStack first. VStack is gonna have the alignment as leading, and for the content it's gonna have a text displaying the title. Okay, and let's go ahead and set the spacing here of 16 point between different elements, and font we're gonna say it's gonna be headline. Okay, make it a little bit bold and bigger, and then we're gonna have a scroll view. This scroll view is gonna be a horizontal scroll view. We want to make sure that our contribution chart fits the screen, but if it goes beyond the screen, meaning like, you know, it has more columns. For example, for the 365 days, it's gonna have more columns. In that case, you want to make sure, like, you know, your user is able to scroll through to see all the data points. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a scroll view shows indicator. We're going to set that to false because we don't want to show indicator, the scroll indicator all the time. And this is where we're going to call our contribution chart view with all the data points. Let's go ahead and format this. So I'm going to put Command M here, or Control M, and let's go ahead and pass data, rows, so all the properties that we have created, columns, your daily target, block size, block color, and empty color. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, our chart is showing up. Let's go ahead and make it appear in the dark mode. So we're going to create a VStack here, and we're going to say color preferred color scheme dark. Looks a little bit nicer in dark. Let's go ahead and add some padding in horizontal direction for about 8 points. Okay, make it look a little bit nice, give it a breathing room, and then we can add optionally another text view stating, like, you know, what each of these cells basically represents. So each block represents completed task for a day. I set the font as caption and foreground style as secondary. There we go. So it looks nice. And let's go ahead and add some padding here, and also set frame max width as infinity and alignment as leading. Okay, and there we go. We have our contribution chart. Now this contribution chart, this view right here, is reusable because you can basically create another view. For example, I can create another view and reuse the same component. All I'm changing basically is, like, you know, how I want to display this chart, and that's what this view is going to be used for. So I'm going to say 364 days is what I want to show for, like, you know, entire year, and I want to show 7 rows and 52 columns. I'm going to leave all the stuff as is, or maybe let's change it to 15. And let's see, what else can we change? Yeah, let's go ahead and create a copy for this. And you can make this reusable as well. So you can say 364 and 364. There we go. Okay, and let's go ahead and change the theme. Let's make this green color. So the second graph shows up as a green contribution chart, and there we have it. We have basically our GitHub contribution chart, and basically this now represents 2 different ranges that we want to show for the contributions. Okay, so this is how you can create your own custom component to reuse and basically build custom UI that basically is needed for your app according to your app's need. All right, so with that, we have reached the end of this video. Once again, I will highly encourage you to check out devtechie.com, and thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys in another video. Thank you.